Good day, chess world. So we're back on our journey of the wonderful endgames of Capablanca with these brilliant endgames from the book written by Chernev, and we are on game number 3. This is from 1909, a match between Frank Marshall and Capablanca. And I'm just going to outline for you, before we jump into this game, some of the big, shall we say, themes you'll learn in this class session. You can call it your master class on endgame play. And the big themes that we're going to look and learn about is number one, the power of coordination. Once again, as we saw in game number 2, we are going to look at this battle of knight and bishop versus rook and the power that it contributes and how do we work with that contribution. Then the next theme that we're going to be looking at is, as you'll see, how do we fight against the opponent's dangerous pass pawn? We're going to see here with Capablanca showing great technical skill for not blockading the pass pawn, but to remove it as a dangerous factor. And then finally, we're going to get to a really very cool little interesting story. Finally, we're going to actually debunk a famous missed mate myth about this game, because there is a lot of chess literature that writes that Frank Marshall missed a forced mate in 5 against Capablanca. And, well, in this game, we're going to find out that's a lie. It's false. There was no missed mate in this game, and we're going to just sort of unpack how that happens. So let's jump right in and talk about who's better, who's worse, what the heck is going on in this case. Now, white has just played queen takes on a7, capturing a pawn. This, as I said, is endgame number 3. And Marshall, should we say, he's thinking, hey, I'm doing well materially, because if you just count the points-wise, he thinks I've got 5 pawns. My opponent has got 4 pawns. So my rook and my extra pawn is just as good as their bishop and knight. As we'll look at and learn today, that is completely not true. First of all, because immediately, yes, you are correct. We're going to gobble up this pawn. We're going to grab this, and it makes all the difference in this case, which is really wonderful for us to see. So now we're immediately threatening knight check, and we can see the power of the knight in this position. So white plays rook to f4, trying to prevent this. And I want you to think a little bit. What would you do to take advantage of this situation? Because we got a queen, we got a knight, we've got the bishop, but with all these extra pieces on the board, surely this endgame is doing well for white because their queen and rook is so active. Well, the plan, of course, is attack the enemy king. Why? Because the rule of 3. Go back, review the Logical Chess series, or sign up to the email list, and you can get some of those notes as well. That'll help you on the concept of the rule of 3. To successfully attack the enemy king, you need 3 pieces. So here we have this fascinating moment where we play bishop to e4. Brilliant. Brilliant on the attack. Well, how can this be brilliant? Surely rook takes bishop, just that's a loose piece. It's just hanging. This is crazy. What has Capablanca done? Well, Capablanca's done a great move because the rook cannot take since knight check. And now, suddenly, if the king goes in the corner, queen into a1 with a beautiful back rank mate. And if the king goes to f1, we see the knight with its hop and its skip, and it jumps onto this rook, winning material in this case. So with the bishop joining in, we are learning a great theme of how we can coordinate the 2 minor pieces with the queen. Because I want to just highlight this theme that's great for you to remember. Whenever queens are on in an endgame, king safety is everything. Get your king safe. Keep your king safe. It's easier said than done, but this is very important, as we'll see from Capablanca. The focus from him is permanently pressuring the white king because of the attacking power that he has. If you recall, and you'll see some later endgames that we'll look at from Capablanca, when queens are off the board in the endgame, You've got to get your king active. You've got to get it fighting. So in this one, pawn to g3. Okay, we've got a great situation. Knight check. Bad news for black. Now, here, sorry, for white, we have an interesting stylistic choice in this position. I want you to think, would you play here, knight takes on h4 with check, or would you play f5 just to support the bishop, which is attacked in this case? Now, why I bring up that it's a stylistic choice is fundamentally Capablanca makes this very interesting decision where he doesn't want to create a material imbalance. He is, shall we say, quite happy to simply win the rook for a piece, as we'll see, trap the rook, and then play to improve his position. He could have played materially knight takes h4 double check, and then it's very difficult. The opponent's going to have to play king to h3. And here it might look like we're going to lose a piece, but this is the important one for those of you who wanted to play this way. You have to see this follow-on move to understand how we are going to play with the black pieces. And the attack is the big detail. So the follow-on move is knight f3. The knight is so sharp and dangerous because now we have this move knight g5 with a fork, winning back the material. Very, very instructive. So Capablanca doesn't like these complications. He says, no, I'm going to support this bishop with a strong pawn move, creating it on an outpost square. So this is really very quite smart, avoiding some of those complications as they stand. And now we get this moment where queen takes b6. It's very simply an attempt to simplify, as we'll see. Queen takes a7, queen takes g7, king takes. This is so lost. It doesn't even count because e5 and, well, the rook is gone. But wait, you say, the rook could take on f3. And suddenly we can see that white is back in this game. Because points-wise, the bishop will take the rook, king will take back, and he's all fine. But here we have a horrible torture for white. They are stuck in a never-ending pin. They cannot escape. So black can just calmly improve their position and take advantage of this moment by bringing their king into the game if they want. So king to g6 and march the king in just to go and win in this scenario. So very simple. Why? Because the king moves away, the bishop takes the rook. If the king never moves, they cannot stop this plan of the king joining in and gobbling up the rook on f3. So he certainly cannot trade. Queen takes b6 in this position is his attempt to get material parity. Now Capablanca focuses on knight takes double check, the most forcing move in chess, because if you're in double check, you cannot capture. No, still in check by the knight. Can't capture, still in check by the bishop. And you certainly can't block because, again, you're in a check. So the only thing is to move the king. He simply plays knight to f3 check. And here, because of the danger of his king being in a mess, he decides that he is going to sacrifice back with his rook. And let's just have a look at that. If he played king back to g2, in the simplest terms, knight discovered check. And if the king moves to h2, what are we going to do with the black pieces in this case? How do we take advantage of this one? Well, it's rather simple, and this is a theme that will permeate through the rest of the game. You are going to play for mate because you have so many pieces. You have the knight, you have the bishop, and then you have the queen. Queen a1, setting up a mating net. And the problem is if he sacrifices, we will take back with a pawn with the intention that we are setting up with knight f3 check with a wonderful Arabian mate. Remember what I said to you? When queen's on the board, king's safety is everything. And here, well, guess what? White's king is not safe at all. So rook takes f3 is what he played. Bishop takes. Queen takes e6. And this is the one that I want you to learn because we're up a piece. This should be an easy win. There are no problems. But just like the chess games that you've faced and you've confronted, your opponent won't resign. Why won't he resign? Well, he's got the queen on the board. He's got a chance for counterplay. And let's talk about that plan here. What are we going to do? Because suddenly we play this move bishop e4 from Capablanca. Our pawn was in trouble. We certainly don't want to lose it. Then he plays this move of pawn to f3. Okay. Bishop to d3, queen to d5, and now we go after the king. Queen check. King g1, and now what should we do to conduct ourselves? How do we improve our position? Well, let us not forget the planning that is so valuable for us in the endgame, and that's plan number 1. Attack the opponent's weak pawns. Which pawn are we going to go after in this case? I think that's really valuable. And here he plays almost a problem-like solution to his position. He plays this move, bishop to b1. Now, this is not some sort of forced win, but it is very clever because the idea is that the bishop is tucked away from little checks and that he has the threat on the pawn here. So a very clever move, and now we get from white pawn to a4. What are we going to do? That dangerous passed pawn looks like it's out of control. I mean, this pawn is just methodically going to march down the board. How are we going to win? Now, plan number 1, attack your opponent's weak pawns. Well, the problem is this pawn is not fixed, and we cannot fix it. So once it arrives on a5, we won't be able to win it. Then plan number 2, use your pass pawns. Well, we don't have any here. So we can't get our king in to go after the weak pawns. So the goal is we need to attack the opponent's weak pawns while threatening their king. And this is Capablanca's idea. Queen a1, very clever. Setting up what? Well, the deadly discovered check wins the queen. So at this point, we get this move queen b7 check, king to g6, and then we get queen b6 check, and the king runs up now to h5. Now, here, this caused actually a bit of a historical uproar, and it shows that we shouldn't trust all the sources until we find our own sources. Because here, there were certain chess books out there that published this position and said Marshall missed a forced win because they put through this win with queen to e8 check. And then the problem was the king moves here. And then there is a mating net they put down in that position. But I'm sure you're busy noticing now, there's a bit of a problem here. The queen was not on c6, so it cannot move here. I suspect somewhere along the line, someone picked up some notation incorrectly. And as we could see, the reason why this position was played, we can deduce that it never happened. Marshall did not miss that he had mate in 5. Capablanca did not miss that he was walking into a forced mate. The whole clear reason why he plays queen b6 check is he's preparing to advance the pawn and he wants to defend the bishop sitting on b1. So here, we get this fascinating bit of history where so many books have published that Marshall missed a forced win. And of course, because queen c6 check is very different, then the queen comes back and blocks this. Capablanca is not just going to walk into the mate, and also Marshall, let's just understand this, is not going to miss if he had this position that he could set up a mating combination in this case. But even if we look at this position, it is just recorded incorrectly in these books, because the actual theme was queen b6 check, this is the move, king to h5, and now white plays king to h2. So we get bishop to a2, and this is again where they have that controversy that these books publish that there is a forced mate in this position with queen e8 check. But again, it's not there. The queen didn't move there. Otherwise, he would have blocked with the queen. So we've cleared up that little bit of controversy. But now let's talk about the endgame itself. What is the path to success here? Because the opponent plays queen b5, and what is our job? Well, we cannot win the weak pawns unless we create a problem to distract their queen away. If we take careful note, the queen is very capable of marching the pawn up the board, and once it gets to a dark square, our bishop can't get to it. So here we get the big theme. We want to attack the enemy king, create the enemy king to be a target. Now first, Capablanca starts with this move, king g6. Very clever move, because if we get a rinse and repeat, the queen will go back, and this helps to set up his plan. So white plays, Marshall plays a5, and this could cause a lot of panic in you during a game, because you see that pawn marching down the board, and you think, but I can't stop this pawn. Well, first and foremost, we certainly can cover that a8 square with our bishop in time, but the more important one that we're seeing here from Capablanca is to focus on the enemy king. When queens are on the board in the endgame, king's safety is paramount, and white's king is not safe. Our job as black is to get at that. So he plays this nice move, queen d4. Why queen d4? Well, we're threatening queen to f2 check. And another nice tip for you in the endgame with queens is if your queen is on the board, try and put it in the center, because it will maximize its strength. But also, if your queen is in the center, the opponents cannot be. And that's valuable. So we see queen check. Fine. Capablanca says, no problem, I'll move my queen out the way. Queen to e8 check. He blocks with the queen, keeping the bishop and queen together. And now he plays queen e6, threatening to invade while protecting the bishop. So Marshall, seeing nothing better, calls the bluff, plays a6. Says, what are you going to do here? How would you play this? So now we require some precise calculation. I want you to think about this. What are you going to do here? Because that pawn is continuing to step down the board more and more and more. And it is simply 2 squares away from being a queen. So how do we take advantage of this one? Well, the theme is very simple. We need to go for the king. And of course, that starts here with a check. But now we need to coordinate our next piece. And that is where this idea of bishop to d5 comes in. Wow, very smart indeed. There are no checks at this stage that white has, so we don't have to worry about it. But what? The Marshall just pushes a7, and this pawn continues to advance in this case. And remember I said to you, we're going to learn how to fight against that passed pawn. And this is very instructive. Normally, we would think we must blockade the pawn. It's our only chance. But actually, we see that we can play against the enemy king that's weak, create that complication, stretch the chess game. And that's so valuable in your games. When queens are on the board, you want to focus on that king weakness. And here's a perfect example. I want you to calculate here, what is the path that black took here, Capablanca took, to get success? Yes, we are going to go for the king. Bishop takes f3. Even though Marshall went and got a second queen on the board, we suddenly finish off with a wonderful mate. Queen g2 check, king h4, queen h1 mate. Now, this is a wonderful masterpiece from Capablanca, demonstrating how do we use the 2 minor pieces with the queen to outplay the rook. The goal was number 1, he attacked that king. So I want you to see the ability for them to coordinate those 2 minor pieces. Absolutely brilliant. Get it now and see that 2 minor pieces beat the rook. There is a giant majority of positions where the 2 minor pieces are just better than the rook. And it's all about the ability to go after the king. Then the second issue is once he won a piece, he didn't just trade, or try and trade down. That's a big theme that a lot of players make a mistake with and would cost them games. Black didn't run around just trying to trade. He was happy to trade off queens if he could, but his opponent instead concentrated on pushing the pawn. Capablanca did not panic. And what did he do? He coordinated his forces calmly and slowly to go after the enemy king. And a big theme was that weird moment of bishop b1. Why that was a valuable move was not necessarily the best move, but it was valuable because it allowed him to protect the bishop and make sure it didn't fall. Because be careful, black's king was also weak and needed to be very cautiously protected. And we learn this theme, loose pieces fall off. Capablanca made sure he didn't have any loose pieces in this one. So a great theme that we're getting in this case, where we see, number one, how did we fight against the passed pawn? We'll see it in some other future ones, different techniques, but in this one, we made their king very weak and targeted the king. Then the next element that we take an understanding of is that coordination of forces against the enemy king and how very, very good that is for us in this case. Finally, also we get that weird moment where it was recorded strangely that Capablanca and Marshall had missed this problem where Queen C6 would have delivered some sort of mate. But as we could see from the moves, Marshall's queen certainly never moved there. Didn't make sense. If he had moved there, he would have blocked it. So a very instructive one. And slowly but surely, I hope you are growing that skill set of how to play endgames. And this game is hopefully demonstrating to you how do we convert when we have the material advantage, and how do we fight against the dangerous passed pawn. So join the mailing list for, of course, the notes on this that'll help you to understand it and the complexities of this one, and continue to watching the series as we grow our endgame knowledge.